if you can just take out the word should,
Wow.
I guarantee you'll feel better.
I know. Well, you're talking to the president and vice president of the Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda Club right now. Hey, everybody. I'm Lori Schulweiss.
And I'm Jenn Giamo.
Welcome to another episode of Everybody Talks, the podcast where we explore the wide world of wellness. Sometimes we talk to experts. Sometimes we just talk to each other. Always talking to you.
Every week we discuss topics from nutrition and exercise to mindfulness and self-care. And today we are talking all about how to be a productive perfectionist.
Let's get started. Our guest today is a renowned author, speaker, and productivity strategist dedicated to helping individuals break free from the constraints of perfectionism and unlock their full potential. With a unique blend of personal experience and professional expertise, she's become a leading voice in the conversation about redefining success, particularly for women.
As a former competitive tennis player and corporate executive, she draws on her rich and varied experience and background to explore the intersection of ambition, self-compassion, and productivity. In addition to her work as an author and speaker, she is also an advocate for mental health and personal development.
In her new book, The Productive Perfectionist, A Woman's Guide to Smashing the Shackles of Perfection.
I love that.
She shares practical tools and transformative insights that empower readers to embrace excellence without sacrificing well-being. She's here to tell us how to do that, especially maybe one of us. Please welcome our guest today, Kathryn C. Mayer. Kathryn, welcome to Everybody Talks.
You already know how this is going to go. We're going to be picking on me a lot.
I know. Well, because I
love it.
Someone is a little more perfectionist driven than the other.
Yeah,
that's not to say that I don't like things perfect. I do, but I'm a little more forgiving.
Yeah, you're a little more flexible. Yeah, we were just having this conversation last night, actually. But anyway, tell us a little bit more about you and sort of your personal journey. What led you to this whole topic of perfectionism?
First of all, I love your energy together. You're just, you both are just, it's so much fun. It really makes you feel comfortable. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for being here.
So perfectionism, of course, you always have to, you always have to blame your mother, right? That's where it all began.
Mm-hmm. You know? Yep, for everything.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, for everything. Right? But my mother definitely was a perfectionist, but in a good way. Like there is good of perfectionist, meaning I'm one of 5 kids, which is a lot of kids. And so her goal was to have each of us be good at something. Right. And so I tried a lot of different things. I was tall, and most of the things I was terrible at. The piano, gymnastics, I was too tall, ballet, I was just like terrible. Finally, I found tennis, right? Because I'm tall, and they're like, oh, wonderful, you're tall, run to the net, you'll scare all the little girls, it's great. So my mother's like, okay, if you're going to play tennis, then you've got to play tournaments, you've got to like really go for it, you've got to be, take it seriously, and if you're going to do something, you got to do it well. There's no kind of like just playing around with it. So you're a kid, I don't know anything, I start doing this, I start winning tournaments, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, then it starts to become me. Like then I start to get frustrated if I don't win. And that was sort of the genesis, a long, long time of perfectionism. So, and that the difference between perfection, striving for perfection, and perfectionism is the ism is when it becomes your identity. Oh. You're only as good or not as good as your latest win, success, whatever. So that's how it started at a very young age. Eventually, as perfection does, you burn out, right? I burned out from tennis. I played in college. I just burned out, right? Because it was just like, it wasn't fun anymore, right? Tennis was fun. And then all of a sudden it became unfun, right? So I burned out. And then like many people do, I did a lot of therapy. I live in New York. I did a lot of therapy.
Right, as one does.
A lot of therapy. Yeah. And then I started to have this realization also in the workplace. So I went from being a tennis player, then I was a tennis coach, because during the burnout period, I was like, I love tennis. So I started coaching, and that's when I realized I really had a talent for that. And so I wanted to figure out how to marry competitiveness and coaching. And that led me, I got to get an advanced degree in psychology, as well as trying to figure out myself, and then to the corporate world and that's actually how I met Ann Parks, is how we all got connected. And got involved in talent management roles, so in developing people in competitive environments. And that's where I started seeing other women suffer from this perfectionism, right? They were really hard on themselves, and I'm sure you've seen all those statistics, right? They won't take a job unless they have 100% they can check off the list. And of course, I was one of those people too, right? So I started to see it. And when you start to work in talent management roles and you start to see who gets promoted and who's up for promotion, and the list of women, especially in investment banking and stuff, it's very small to begin with, and it shrinks because they don't think, oh, I can't do that, I'm not sure. And the men are like, I don't know if I could do it, but I'm going to go for it. What the hell?
Right.
So
it's so
then you
different,
start
right?
to see it very different. I really started to see it a lot. And I was like, wow, this is real, right? It's not just.
And why do you think that is? Do you think, I mean, obviously I know the differences, men versus women, but like, why do you think that women are so much harder on themselves than men?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, right? There's lots of different theories, right? I'm sure you have your theories. I mean, there's academics that have studied that. Two that come to mind around that beliefs their research and beliefs I really like. One is Carol DeWick, who wrote the very seminal book Mindset, about the growth and the fixed mindset. And she studies young boys and girls in school. And the boys get 8 times more criticism. That number 6 than girls. 8 times more criticism. And girls get lots of feedback like, you're perfect, you look good, you're so nice. And boys just keep getting all that negative feedback. So it reinforces that girls get rewarded for being perfect, right? And boys can just get away with a lot of stuff. And, and then what happens is, she also says that women start trusting other people's opinions of them too much, right? So they buy into all that. Whereas boys think, I get 8 times much criticism. I don't know. Should I believe them? Oh,
yeah.
Right.
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah. And maybe it's that they develop a thicker skin too, through all of that.
Right. I had a very thin skin, right? Somebody would tell me something and I'd be like, oh, and that's so, that gets reinforced in society, that pretty girls, they're perfect, they get straight A's, and women do better in school in general. I think the statistics still show that. I'm not positive on that, but I think they still show that. And so I think it's a combination of that, along with Deborah Tannen's work that says, she's a very well-known psychologist or linguist, at Georgetown University, written a lot of books that have sold millions of copies around the world. And she studied children as well as adults. And what she talks about is how women's identity comes from intimacy, meaning we want to connect with people, whereas men's comes from status. So they like to one-up each other.
Yes.
And so if you think of the perfect thing, we want to be liked, we want to connect, and then the men are like, they want to win, they want to beat people, they want, it's just, it's a different source of energy.
Yeah, we're more people pleasers,
we
right?
are.
I mean,
and I also think, like, don't we take things so much more personally than men do?
Yes,
as well,
right. Because of that,
by nature.
By nature, I
mean, the sensitivity
and we have the
thing.
children, right?
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, just funny that, earlier today, I was saying to Lori, and I think, and I'm not going to, I tend to bring a lot of things back to like hormones and women, because that's like my thing.
Go-to.
My go-to.
Yeah.
But, this like idea of these fluctuations that women have, and that we are like, we have these high highs and low lows, and this like sort of all over the spectrum, for lack of a better word, moodiness. But like I was saying to Lori today, I came over here and I was like, for whatever reason, like on the verge of tears. And I'm like, I have no idea why.
It was funny. Like, I sent her a text earlier today that I was just like teasing her, and she sent me back a sad face. And I was like, she got so like offended.
Not even offended. I just was like
rejected. And I meant it just as like a friendly, I mean, you see how we are. Like, I obviously didn't mean it, but I was like, oh no, I really like hurt her feelings.
I don't know. So just that level. And I think
that's that intimacy thing, right?
Yeah.
That's like the good example of the Deborah Tannen intimacy thing. You always want, women are very sensitive to any fluctuations in the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Which is a good thing, right? That makes us good at relationships. It's actually a really good thing, right?
Yes.
Kathryn, in the book, you talk about, I want to kind of get into some of these themes
Right.
and concepts in the book. And you talk about shackled perfectionism and productive perfectionism. It was just a mouthful for me to say.
I know,
I'm going to
that's a
trip over
lot.
those words
Yeah.
throughout this interview.
Yeah.
But can you elaborate on that? What is the difference?
So the big difference is the shackled is sort of what I've talked about at the beginning, that their identity is all wrapped up in being, the result. So the shackled are constantly looking for approval. They're constantly trying to do things at their own standard. So, for example, like a very classic story that I talk about in the book is this woman named Betsy, so it's obviously a pseudo name, but she gets promoted. She's a money manager. She gets promoted to a C-level job, and her boss gives her this big task to do. And she just decides to do it at 110%, which ends up taking a lot longer. And he doesn't want any of that. He wanted something like at 85%. But she was just like, well, I'm going to show him I can do it all and I want to impress him. And yet she never checked that standard with him. So that's what a shackled perfectionist looks like. They always think, they have to do it at this standard or else they're not good enough. And sometimes that is what's needed, right? Sometimes 100%, 10% is needed, but many times it's just not. And so the productive ones do check, make sure their standards are aligned. They do reward themselves when they do things well. They're not like that rat on the treadmill that just never, it's just never good enough. And so and then there's a bunch of other differences, but at a high level, that's the big idea.
So how can women or people in general just kind of recognize when that perfectionism, that level of perfectionism is holding them back?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, right? Because it can show up in different ways. I mean, I think the thing about perfectionism is, I'd ask the questions: are you feeling like you're never good enough? Like, is there self talk that you just sort of feel, you're just never good enough, and it's you are tied to your results. So you and your results, you tie your self worth to that. Like if you start to feel that, versus, if you just feel like something didn't go well, and that's different than you as a person feeling bad. So when you start to feel like your identity is wrapped up in the results, if you're starting to suffer from some of that, you could also start to feel burnout, feel like you're just losing your energy, joy for things that you like doing, be it anything,
Yeah.
I mean, those are some of the classic tales. I think that's the saddest thing about perfectionism is that most perfectionists want to do well, right? They care about results. And that's a wonderful thing, right? We need that energy. And that's partly why I'm really passionate about that is that most of them really care about it. It's just then they start to lose the joy, they get burned out,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
and their
Yeah.
performance goes down if they start to get, feedback that they're moving too slow, they're limiting themselves, they're focusing on the wrong things, they're not able to delegate. Um, those are a lot of different ways it can show up.
I
Yeah.
feel a therapy session coming
I
on
know.
right now for
right
me.
now for her. Yeah.
But
Because I know that you're like that.
I am, but it's funny because I don't think that, for me personally, I don't think that I do anything perfectly. I mean, no one does, but like when I hear that word perfectionism, like the way you're describing it is definitely me, but I don't, I don't know how to explain it. I don't think
I
that,
think when you're in the throes of doing something, you are not striving to be perfect. It's
Right.
not, you don't want it to be perfect, but you kind of just want to get it done.
I want to get it done, but I want to go above and beyond what people think that I'm going to deliver. You know what I mean? Like I'm like,
but that's okay too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not to say that's a bad thing, right? There's a time and a place for it, right? You're in
Yeah.
client-centered business, as am I. My first new clients, I want to do that, right?
Right.
But then does it become like this, sort of self-fulfilling prophecy where you just have to do it on everything, on all the time? That's the difference, is that those that aren't suffering from perfectionism, but have perfectionist tendencies, they're not shackled. They do go above and beyond, but maybe not all the time, every day for everything. Does that make sense?
yeah, that
Yeah.
does make sense.
Yeah.
That does make
Yeah.
sense.
So my sense is you strive to do things really well, and that's great. So it's only if you start to feel that burnout, like,
Yeah.
that, it feels too much, right? All the time.
Yeah.
It's almost like, it's not that it feels too much, but I will say that I'm physically exhausted at the end of a lot of days. Like, I can't, the end of the day, I just want to shut down, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I should, and I do a lot of shoulds. I
Oh,
should
shoulds,
be
that's a
still
perfectionist
doing
thing.
this. Yeah.
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 And if I sit down to watch TV at 8 o'clock at night, I'm like,
Oh,
well,
it's
what
a
am I
waste of time.
doing? This is such a waste
Yeah,
of time.
I know.
Everything, if it's not, and she knows this about me,
Yeah.
like, if I read, I don't read for pleasure. I mean, I do read for pleasure, but pleasure to me is a self-help book, is something that I'm learning, is
When's the last time you read a fiction novel?
when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Probably. Like,
Yeah,
I just
point.
don't read for, I
Yeah.
don't read fiction. I don't read, because I feel
Yeah.
like it's a waste of time. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I could be learning
Not
something
for
in this
enjoyment.
hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're a real, that means your identity is coming from doing, right? And a lot of perfectionists are doers versus, there's doing and there's being, right? And part of perfectionism is that you're a doer. And I've struggled with that too, Jen. So I totally,
Mhm.
I've done a lot of work on that too, because I can totally identify. I've been like that in my life as well. I didn't really read much fiction either until over the last 20 years. I've been reading more, but the idea is right. Is perfectionism, is that doing? And part of what I talk about in the book is learning to feel more satisfied, and rewarding yourself, doing things that reward, what would that reward be? It doesn't mean you have to read fiction novels if you don't want to do that. You could do something else. I don't know.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Watch a fun TV show.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Exactly.
And I do that. I mean, I
You
definitely do that.
Definitely do that.
But things that I do for pleasure are never without guilt. Never.
Yeah.
So that means you have a
There's-
standard that you're not, that doing things.
I don't know, because again, like, I don't think that I'm like this amazingly talented person that does things that are so like outside the box. Like,
You don't like to waste time.
I don't like to waste time.
Yesterday,
She gets so mad about
oh
it.
my God.
So mad.
Yesterday, for example, we had a lot to get done for the podcast. We had to videotape things, whatever. And so take photos. I mean, I had worked a full day at my job
Oh, wow.
already. And so then I'm
Job,
like,
yeah.
I go to meet her. And so, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, did we get enough done? Do you feel like we accomplished? Like, at the end of every day we spent together, I go, was this a good day? Did we do enough? Did we get enough accomplished? Because I feel like we did. I feel like it was a good one. But if you don't feel like it was a good one, then I'm not ready to go home.
Everyone's
and
gonna suffer now.
Everyone's going to suffer now. And we have to do more.
Yeah, no, I get what it's like. Yes, it's definitely tied to the doing and the checking off of a list.
Yeah,
and
the to-do list. The
the
almighty
to-do list.
Yeah.
And I'd love to lose some of that. Like, I'd love to let go of some of that, because
Some of that.
it's
Yeah.
exhausting.
Because why?
Yeah.
What's the consequence? I think for the sake of what? If you're going to do that, part of what would that give you in your life? Like what?
Letting go of it.
Yeah, letting go of something.
I think. Well, I don't know. I mean, more like sort of freedom of time, and and just that ability to relax and not worry constantly. Like, if I'm not doing something in that moment, that like my whole business is going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because you definitely
Yeah, because
feel
you're
that way.
self-employed. I mean, being self-employed,
Yeah.
it's also time is
Yeah, it's
money, and
different.
there's
Sure,
more
yeah.
pressure. But I
Yeah.
mean, I think that that would be the challenge that sort of that I would say to you, and also part of the work in the book, and I've gone through that same journey too. Is learning to let go and just start in very small, time increments. I mean, literally, I talk about a lot of the habits, doing them in 5 minutes. Like, see those hula hoops behind me?
Yeah,
Yes,
I was going to ask you about the hula hoops.
Yeah.
That's part
I
of
did
like
not.
my.
I was like, are you in Cirque
Yeah.
du Soleil on the side? Like, I didn't know.
Definitely not.
Yes.
but I started doing that a lot actually during the pandemic. As my sanity, like, and part of it was like in a reward. You get something done, you can hula hoop for 2-3 minutes, and it's fun. And it's a little exercise, and it kind of takes you out of your left brain, like very like, to-do list kind of thinking, it just
Yeah.
breaks you out of it. So part of it, if you're going to start to break out of that doing versus being, is just start to do some things that are a little lighter, like, and that give yourself some satisfaction, and that you enjoy. because I mean, I too was like that too, Jen. So I totally relate. It was like I hated to waste time, because the way you get good at things, I became a good tennis player not by goofing off, right? By just
Practice.
really
Sure.
hard work. And
Discipline.
anybody who's good at
Right.
anything, that's how you get there.
I
So we're
know.
not saying get rid of any of that. It's just learning to enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy some of it and give yourself some reward, your performance really, and they've studied a lot of athletes, and I do talk about that, the performance psychologists that study athletic performers, be it tennis players, Olympic athletes, the ones that can, from a tennis perspective, take times between the points. Like in tennis matches, they have times between the points. If they take that 15 seconds between the points and just have some, like, letting go of whatever that last point was, taking some deep breaths, visualizing success, like those players relax more and they tend to play better.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've talked to a lot of different experts about, we actually had someone last week who is a spiritual guru, for lack of a better word. And he wrote a book called Just One Conscious Breath. And he does this one breath every 8 minutes, and it
Right.
just recenters him. And he said, if you, like you just said, like if you could let go, you'd be surprised how you're letting things in and you're letting things, happen, that maybe if you're gripping too tightly
Right.
to, you're
Right.
never gonna let those things in, because there's that
Exactly.
resistance, that built up resistance. But yeah, that's interesting. I you need to teach me how to do this. So on that note, like, what you do talk about some of these practical tools and exercises in the book, self-assessments. I know you had
Right.
one called like the satisfaction habit and the reality
Habit.
check.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
The satisfaction habit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that came from Jim Lair. I don't know if you know of him. He was one of the early sports psychologists that worked with a lot of well-known tennis players. He started in I think in the 80s and the 90s he did. But what he found was, again, those, and again, I'd go back to tennis players who were playing doubles. And, if you've ever watched any professional doubles teams play, after every point, they high five each other, whether they win or they lose. And that idea is they're like, okay, we're satisfied, even if it was the worst point ever
Wow.
or it was
Mhm.
the best point ever. And what that
Yeah.
does is, right, it ends that, right? There's an ending. And then you could also talk about, okay, that really didn't work so well. And that's also where I bring in positive psychology from Martin Seligman, if you've ever looked at any of his stuff. And basically what he talks about is how you talk about that mistake, right? And the people that rebound faster talk about it differently than those who don't rebound as fast. And I could get into more of that if you're interested. So really, the
Yeah.
satisfaction
No, I
habit is some
am.
kind of physical thing, right? I do think the
Okay.
physical
Yeah.
thing is important, even at work. Even during, a lot of people, mostly work on Zoom or work at home. They can still high five virtually, right? Or do something to kind of end whatever. So you say that's over, and then you talk to yourself about, okay, what went well, what didn't, and what Seligman talks about is that the people that um, talk about their good qualities in a universal way, and then they give a specific reason for whatever didn't work out so well. And then they don't personalize it. They don't make it like, like, let's say you had a presentation to give to a new client, and you didn't get the work, and you're like, I didn't feel like I was at my best. And the people that don't rebound as fast would say something like, well, I'm usually not that good at making presentations anyway, so it's not surprising, right, that I didn't get this. Whereas the people that bounce back more quickly would say, wow, I don't feel like that. I wasn't at my best. I didn't really get a great sleep last night. I was a little tired. I'm usually pretty good at this, but because I was a little tired, I didn't prepare as much. And so next time I'll prepare a little bit more and make sure I try to get a little more sleep, and I'll do a little better.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. That makes
It
sense.
seems
I
It
mean,
simple.
does.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
but it is and it isn't.
It's like kind of letting yourself off the hook. I mean, I'm terrible when I make a mistake. Like
yes,
I
you are.
I relive it over and over. Like,
Mhm.
especially if it's like a big misstep. It could be at work. It could be personally. Like, ugh, why did I say that? I should have done this. I wish I hadn't done that. I do a lot of that
But you're
after the
also
fact.
you're also very good at coming back to that scenario and I don't want to say fixing it, but like addressing it.
Yes.
Like you're very good at like recognizing it and addressing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Wow.
which is
I
good.
think that
I
that's
mean,
good.
yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing, right? You want to learn from the mistakes.
Yeah.
So it's just that
Yeah.
you don't want that the should stuff is when it gets into
should
it. It's
stuff
if
is
you could
terrible.
take away, you really never want to
Yeah.
say should. I mean, that's basically, you know,
Yeah.
I
like,
know.
Yeah.
I think I just do a whole program,
Yeah.
you know, why should I have this whole exercise on why should
Well,
I?
oh, I love
And it's
that.
been one of my most popular exercises with groups because I've done it with college students, corporate people,
Yeah.
whatever, because, you know, most of us have all these shoulds. Like I did one for the holidays. It's like, you know, how to have a perfectionism free holiday, right? Because we have all these shoulds. And if you just stop saying should, right? And say, well, it would have been better if I had done this, or, you know, I'd like to send out 100 Christmas cards, but that's probably not going to be realistic. Maybe I just go for 10 this year and, you know, and that's all I can do. And that's good enough, right? It's, if you can just take out the word should,
Wow.
I guarantee you'll feel better.
I know. Well, you're talking to the president and vice president of the Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda Club right now.
But most people are. I mean,
I know.
I was that way too. Again,
Yeah.
I use that all the time. And then all of a sudden I was realizing like, it's just not making me feel good,
terrible.
you know?
It's a terrible,
feeling.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
But, you know, just going back for a second to what you were saying about, you know, the example you gave, someone giving a presentation and, you know, it didn't go well and whatever. And I tend to feel like by saying, oh, I didn't get enough sleep or this happened or that happened, that I'm making excuses for myself and I'm not owning it. I'm not owning, guess what? You sucked at that. That sucked, you know? But I also understand what you're saying. It's like, well, there are valid and legitimate reasons why, and you also have to recognize those and say like, oh, okay, that really is what happened.
Right.
And but that's not my go-to. Like that's not where I go
That's not
first
where you start.
at all. Nope.
Well,
mine
you
is
know what?
like
In full transparency, when I took Martin Seligman has a quiz. If you Google him, he has an optimism. Martin Seligman, he has an
yes,
positive
I think
psychology.
I've heard of it.
When I first took that quiz, I flunked it. Right? I did.
Wow.
I was terrible. Right? I did the same as you. I was not. I was really hard on myself, and yeah. And so that's what I started to realize. I was like, oh, luckily I had a mentor who made me take that because she, I'm sure, realized I was too hard on myself. And she goes, take that and let's discuss it. And I'm like, she goes, well, yeah, you know, have some areas to improve on. You know, she was the most positive person.
Oh,
I mean,
my God.
she was amazing. This mentor, she's still alive. She's just amazing. But yeah, I mean, so I think that's pretty common, you know, to be hard on ourselves, right? And we think somehow if we're nice or we're not taking responsibility that we're going easy, but it's actually the opposite of that, that if you can be kinder to yourself and be more specific about what went wrong, it doesn't mean you can't be hard on yourself. You could say, wow, you know, that was a costly mistake not to do well at that presentation. You know, like that wasn't great, but let's learn from it so we don't have that happen again, you know? And I actually keep a list, and I talk about this in the book, A Simple Habit, what I call the value added list, where once a week, it's either a Friday or a Monday, I look at what did I do well the past week? Where did I add value? And where didn't I add value? And, you know, and I look at it every week, not the whole list, of course, but because I've been doing it for, I don't know, like over 10 years, but it's great because the goal is you're going to keep making mistakes, but try not to keep making the same
ones.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
you know,
definitely.
but the key is but I think what you're saying though, Jenn, is really common. We all of us high performers think, oh, we can't give ourselves a break, you know, because we're not going to continue to be a high performer.
Yeah. If you let something slide or let it go, then that's going to
in your
become
mind
the
you
habit.
think it's like, if I stop working out, I'm going to lose my muscle tone. Which is true.
Right.
And so, but you're looking at your life that
there is truth to that. Yeah.
There's truth to that, but there's not truth in other things that you do.
I know. It sort of carries.
It sort of carries over. Kind of over, you know?
So that's so just going back, does that answer your question about the satisfaction?
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
definitely.
So just coming up with deliberate, and the more deliberate you can be about this, the better, right? And just really, when things don't go well, you have to keep, like you said, Laura, you know, keep going over it. And the more you can keep going over it in a positive way, right?
Yeah.
That'll help you, right? You won't get stuck in, you know, a tape that really brings you down.
Totally.
You know,
That's so hard to do, though. I mean,
very
It
hard.
is.
even in situations where, like, I still think and hold on to things from 10 years ago
Oh
that,
yeah,
like, I will go to sleep at night and I'll
Yeah.
replay the
Yeah.
scenario in my head. And I'm like, God, why didn't I say that?
that.
Why
Yeah.
didn't I
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's so clear to me now, so, but I like that idea of like the high five or like the physical symbolism of like breaking it. Like, okay, this,
it
this
gets
is
you out
done
of your
now.
head.
Yeah, it gets you out of your head.
Yeah.
It just
Exactly,
breaks
and
it.
and that's why I like that. Right, right.
Yeah.
And women too. Just to your point, Jen, there is research about women. This very good book that came out many years ago called "The Female Brain." She talks about how that part of our brain that remembers things is because women have children, right? And we need to remember things. And it's like the funny story a friend of mine told me when she had a baby and she, a newborn baby, and she left it with her husband while she went to the store or whatever. And when she came home, the baby's crying, but the husband's asleep.
Ah, that's hilarious.
It's hilarious, but that would
sounds
never
about
happen
right.
with a woman, right?
I
Never.
know.
Woman
No.
would not be sleeping through that, but she's like, oh, geez,
I know.
Women do have that tendency. There is that in the brain, and I don't have kids either, but I'm married, and my husband will say, like we'll have a big fight. The next day, I'll be like, "Are we good?" And he's like, "Good? What? What?" I said, "Remember the fight yesterday? Ah, that was yesterday." I'm like, okay, well, it's still running the tape in my mind, but
Yep.
for him, that was yesterday. That's
He's
gone.
forgotten about it.
Yeah.
Totally.
What was the fight about again?
Yeah.
He's like, oh,
Yeah.
no.
Well,
never
actually, you
mind.
kind of answered my question because I was saying a lot of this is that's so true.
A man woman thing. Yeah, it is. It's funny.
But like a lot of these things are it's easy to see how you can use these things in your professional life, but it's harder to see how you use them in your personal life and the separation of that. And so can you speak to more of that? Like there you are in your marriage trying to get through this and you're still thinking about it and he's not, but how do you apply those kinds of things to just interpersonal
In your personal
and your
life,
family?
the
Yeah.
perfectionism thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think obviously with if your if your perfectionism is with you in your professional life, it's going to be in your personal life. So, I mean, I think the key is you got to have discussions around what is good enough. Like what, how clean does the house need to be? What's you have to really, and I try to do this because my husband is also, I think, a bit of a perfectionist himself, but we have different places where we're perfectionists, right? So I think the key is you've really got to have conversations, around standards, because that's really kind of the big idea is just getting more transparency and agreement around standards. And if you did have kids or other people living with you, it's like, what's enough? What's good enough?
Yeah.
And so I
Right.
think that's for me what I do. The second idea is also just having more time for spontaneity, not being so planned. As busy people, we usually have a lot of plans. And so one of the things my husband and I talked about this year is just, having a day once or twice a month where we don't have any plans, and just allowing more spontaneity. So it's not so planned and rigid. Like, I think that helps, just having a little bit more of that. And I think the third thing is just this idea of playfulness, making sure you have some time for silliness, for playfulness, whatever that is, or hula hooping. My husband and I actually have a date night once a week where we play tennis. And, and the hard thing for me, because I'm a much better tennis player than him, of course.
I was going to say, how brave of your husband to play with you.
It is. He is. He's actually a very brave man. Yeah, he is. Right. So, but I have to change my standards. I have to be so it's just more fun. And that is the goal of fun. And I would be really transparent and say it has not been easy for me just to say it's just going to be fun. Because for him, it's just fun. It's like, oh, we're running around, it's exercise. But for me, it's always been much more than that. So I've had to really learn. But actually, he's been teaching me, something that we do together where the goal is just fun. And so I think the more you can have that, whatever that is, cooking together, walking together, movies, whatever it is, but something that is just playful and fun, I think is really important.
I love that.
I like
Does
that
your
too.
husband hula hoop also?
He's a terrible hula hooper. He
Oh my
tried, but
God.
he's like, I
I
don't know.
know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Hips thing, it just doesn't really
Yeah.
work.
Oh my God,
Oh
that's
my God.
funny.
Hilarious.
But
That's so
no, I
funny.
think that's such good
Yeah.
advice, and that's so true of like that idea of just being
Yeah.
transparent, but also like the fun and
Yeah.
the like
Like add a little levity to,
yeah.
Levelly, yeah, because the perfectionists, we take ourselves way too seriously,
way
and
too seriously.
that's been a lifelong problem of mine, and just really trying to do other things that are just like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a
sure.
little lighter,
Yeah.
and my husband definitely, I think he has a good sense of humor, and he'll make fun of me a lot, which is
Yeah.
important, like
Mm-hmm.
playfulness, because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise it's like, oh,
Yes, I
Yeah.
will say that my my boyfriend teases me all the time because I'm famous for like Monday morning quarterback, right? He'll tell me something that he did, and I'm like, well, why wouldn't you have done? He's like, Jen, it's already done. Why are you telling me what I should have done? Like he doesn't say it in a mean way, but he's laughing at me like,
Yeah.
I've already done this thing. And to me, I can't wrap my head around why would you do it like that
Yeah.
when it doesn't make any sense? Like, and it's things that to me are so obvious that I'm like, oh, well, if you would have told me you were doing that, then I would have said, he goes, yeah, you would have, you should have, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
fair. You're
Yeah.
right. You are absolutely right.
That is so funny.
But yeah, there
That's
are
funny.
there are a lot of situations
Situations
like
like that. But part of that, when you see the shoulda,
I
coulda,
know.
oughta, it's just kind of agreeing on the standard. Oh, okay, so we
Right.
just have different standards on certain
Mhm.
Yes.
things, right?
Well, I
Yes.
think
So,
that I make a lot more sense than he does. So
of course.
You always got to run it by Jen. Let me just say, when you
Well,
make a decision,
because
run it by.
you know that
Yes.
logistics are
That's
my
her
thing.
jam.
If
Like,
you're doing something that logistically doesn't make
Yeah.
sense, I'm like,
you
why,
hate that.
Why
Oh
would
my
you do
God.
it like that? Like you've
Yeah.
wasted
You do
time.
not know. Yeah.
Kathryn, I have a lot of issues. I have a lot of things.
But you're
we
good
could
at
dig
that.
into.
That's your thing,
She is
right?
good at that
So,
because I do ask your advice. Like, would it be easier for me to do this or this? Should I
Right.
do this or this? And then you kind of like help break it down
I
so that
guess.
that happens.
But I
you
don't
know?
have to be so like controlling about it. I am very controlling about it. And I recognize that. Like I do think that my way is usually the best way.
My way is the right way, your way is the wrong way, but I'm trying to relax about it.
I'm really relaxed about it.
there's nothing wrong with that. I feel that way
Oh
about
my
certain
God.
things that I'm good
Yeah.
at, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
I think the key is just having a sense of humor about that, though,
Yeah.
Jen.
Yeah.
I think as long as you have a sense of humor about that, I think it's like, I would have done it this way. If you do it that way,
Right.
I hope it works out for you. All the best.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Well, you know what, too? I think there's so many things that I'm not good at that when there is something that I'm like, oh, this is my jam. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you how to do this because
I know how.
It's your
I know
job.
how.
Yeah.
It's my thing.
Yeah.
But I think as long as you're upfront about that and have a sense of humor
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
that's to me
Definitely.
is not perfectionism. Perfectionism is when there really isn't a sense of humor. It's like that
Yeah.
Betsy
Right.
story.
Right.
She
Right.
wasn't having a sense of humor about this. She was working
No.
hard. And when the boss said, and this is the big killer with those that suffer from perfectionism, is that he was like, my credibility of you is now going down. It's going
Oh.
down because you're overworking and you're
Oh.
overworking on the wrong things. And that's not what I want in an executive, right? I want an executive that understands some things have to be done perfectly and other things not.
Yeah.
And the key is to know the difference. And if you don't know
Wow.
the difference,
Right.
this
Well,
isn't going to work
it's
It's
out.
not going to work.
Yeah.
And especially, I would think if you're managing people
Right.
and you are
And she
setting that
is.
example, right? You're setting that example.
Exactly, right. That's
Yeah.
one of the killers of there's a book called Why CEOs Fails and Why CEOs Fail. One of, I don't know, whatever they have, let's say 10 things that kill CEOs. Perfectionism is one of them, right?
Mhm.
Because
Wow. Yeah.
they spend too much time on the wrong things. They take too long,
Right.
and that might have worked like maybe 40 years ago, but in today's fast-paced world, forget it. So it is. That's why I think it's even more of a challenge today than
I think
ever.
that's
So
true.
you have a
I
sense
think
of
that's
humor,
true.
Jen. I think that's
I do.
you
I
know
do.
the difference.
But I also work for
Take a
myself,
joke.
so no one is really
I
suffering
know.
from that. But
It's-
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely hard when you have, it is hard when you answer to someone. you know?
absolutely, absolutely. But do you think, Kathryn, that like people sort of wear that as a badge of honor too? Like I'm thinking about the people that, right? Like you say like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm so busy. I don't have time. I'm so
I
busy because I'm
know.
doing this, this,
Yeah.
and this. And
Yeah.
yes.
and it's like,
Yeah.
You know,
I've used that too. I mean, I'll be totally
Yeah.
honest. I've used it too, right? I'm so
Yeah.
important, right? I have all this stuff to do. I'm so important.
Yes.
And, being aware that, nobody's really that important.
exactly.
Like,
Exactly. So you've given us different examples of perfectionists. And so what about like, if you are a perfectionist, how can you sort of like redefine that into something that's, I guess, a little more positive? I want to
Yeah.
say, yeah.
Yeah.
What would that look like?
so, I mean, I think, and that's kind of the big idea of the book is that to own the positives, which are that you care, you want to do things well. So, I want to be good at whatever it is you want to be good at. I want to run a successful business, be a good partner, whatever it is. And so then you need to really set standards like what is going to be good enough, and I have my own coach for my own business or whatever, and she'll constantly ask me that, like even in just putting out this book, well, what's going to be good enough, like what. And that's always a tough question, like, because I'm like, okay, what is going to be good enough, and so the key is really to realize you want to do well, and to constantly ask yourself. I think, I ask myself, I don't know, 100 times a day, what's going to be good enough? I have a long to-do list, I never get it done every day. My husband be like, did
Right.
you get your list done today? I'm like, really? Get my list done today?
I
Like,
know.
when will that happen? That will, and if it
Exactly.
does happen, that's probably then that day I'm dead, like it's just
Yeah.
like,
There's always more to add to that list. There's always more.
always, right? Always. But that's, I think part of that's being somebody who wants to do well and has a lot of things going on in their life, So I think all that's good. The key is just to keep asking yourself, what's good enough? What are my priorities? What's okay if I don't get that done, and really constantly trying to be kinder to yourself, and talk to and be aware of the words that you say to yourself. I think that's the second big thing is you've got to talk to yourself more positively. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
Pollyanna-ish, but
No.
it's some of that positive psychology, some of that, just being kinder.
Yeah.
I think is key because the words
Sure.
really do matter.
Yeah.
They really do.
They really do.
I think it's
Yeah.
also important to have people in your life
And
who point
exactly,
those
you need to
things
have
out to you,
Yes.
right?
yes,
Like
you need to have a
it's
good community of network, right? That would be a third thing. Yeah, the network part is a big part of this thing of really having a community of people that you can get feedback from, you can get support from. Um, because the bigger network you have, you think of it like a trapeze artist, right? The bigger the network, the more that allows you to make mistakes, right? Because
sure.
people will
Yeah.
give you the
Sure.
benefit of the doubt.
Sure. Gives you
So yeah,
room.
so it
Yeah.
looks like, you know, you're clear about what's important to you. Keep asking yourself what's good enough. You talk kinder to yourself. You have you feel more satisfied. You have to have clear things like what's enough today. Okay, I didn't get everything done. However, I got the two key things done, and let's figure out when I get to get the other things done. And then you have this network. You're constantly building relationships, or that you have people to ask for help, to get feedback from. Um, and then you make some time for yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. I think that's so important.
So if someone is just starting out and like realizing they're listening to this and they're like, oh, I fit into this category. What's like a beginning? What's a step one of getting yourself
Overcoming
breaking?
perfectionism,
Yes,
breaking
of
free.
breaking free of the shackle. I love the word shackles. By
Shackle.
the
I know
way,
shackles. Yeah, I
um,
didn't come up with that. Somebody else came
yeah,
up with that. But yeah,
but
I know. What's getting rid of that shackles, right? How do
yeah,
you get rid of it?
yeah,
I think because I'm a coach for a living, it's like that question that like what's most annoying you? Like, okay, I'm a
yeah,
perfectionist. I realize that right now. What's really annoying me? Like, where does it show up? And I think it's usually just good to begin. What's bothering you the most? Are you working too much? Are you not having any fun? Do you feel like you don't have time for your friends or your kids or whatever? So, if you can just start whatever's bothering you and just start with one little area, and I'd say start really small. Like when I started realizing I was like that rat in a treadmill, it was like, okay, my coach is like, well, how about if you just do something to, when you finish a big task, you celebrate it. And that's where the hula hoop thing started a little
oh,
bit,
that's funny.
and also I'm a big tennis fan, and, tennis tournaments are on all the time. And she's like, well, why not
Right,
take a break and watch 10 minutes of tennis? And I'd be like,
right,
I can do
oh,
that. Like I can watch 10 minutes of tennis in the
right,
middle of the day. She's like, well, would that make you feel good? And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be kind of fun, or take my mind off whatever. And so I just started doing little things that just started breaking up the day of feeling burned out. Like I was always tired, sort of, as you said. And so just by doing these little things, I started feeling, more buoyant. That's how I started, with just like these little buoyant, right? And that's a good word. And that's where I started, of just taking these little breaks, which seemed really small, but um, and there's another book that I really got this idea from called The Joy Diet. I don't know if any of you've heard of that by this woman named Martha Beck, who I really like. She's a brilliant, brilliant woman. But yeah, it's just like 5 minutes here and there. Try to do things that lighten you up a little bit, and
Sure.
reward you. And then I think just notice what happens.
Mm-hmm. I think that also helps with, like, a lot of times for me, I, like you mentioned, like being like a hamster on a wheel, or, this rat on a treadmill, however you want to say it.
I definitely feel that.
Where you get caught up in, like, well, I'm procrastinating doing this thing because it has to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, I'm not.
Paralyzes you.
It paralyzes me.
Yeah,
Like,
it paralyzes
analysis
me.
paralysis is
Yes. I'm a victim of that too.
Yeah.
That's why I can't clean my house. I get
Well,
paralyzed.
that's a whole different thing.
It is, but you see a task as being so big, and you don't want to do it poorly. You want to do it well,
Right.
so you don't do it at all, because
So
you don't even
right.
start.
You don't do it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to start. That's one of the principles of the book, is this idea of, starting very small. And for perfectionists, like you said, Lori, we want to do it big or go home. Like that's one of my big mottos, right? Go big or go home, right? And so, but the problem is, like, if I want to clean out my office, can I just do it like 10 minutes a day, or having more time for creativity? One of the things I want to do this year is get more creativity in my life that's not related to work. But, when am I going to fit that in? Like, that's another thing. So I've tried to get it down to 10 minutes, a few times a week, not be rigid with every day, but I can usually find 10 minutes a few times a week just to write something creative. And I have little writing prompts that, I'm on a whatever app that has it. So like, that's one way of breaking out of that analysis paralysis. Break it down to very small things and see how it makes you feel.
Sure.
Right.
Wow.
And being able to, like, then prioritize those things that are most important, because I struggle with a lot of things, but that's another piece.
You do have trouble prioritizing.
I do, because everything's important. Everything's important
That's
to
a
me.
perfectionist thing too. I definitely struggled with that too.
She's the queen of in the weeds.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, why are you doing this when, let's look at the big picture of this and do that.
I'm much less big picture and way more like detail.
But that's what makes aware of that. You just need a coach. You just need a coach or a friend or a mentor, somebody that keeps asking you, okay, what's the big picture?
I need you. I need you in my life.
I know.
Maybe we'll swap. Maybe skills here.
There we go.
Yeah.
But that helped, right? That's what that helps.
Sure.
I had a conversation with my business coach and struggling with certain things, and she, brings me out. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, and that's really what I think coaching is, why it's really helpful. Is it just, the goal is to ask you questions and make you aware of things, and then propose, help you to come up with your own solutions. Because most people can figure out, they have the resourcefulness, but they need the questions and somebody who is like in a safe space who believes in them. Like, you can figure this out. And also getting them in touch with, for the sake of what? Like, that's the other big idea.
Right.
Going back to that Betsy executive. Yeah, she was really great at being in the weeds, but did she want to become a successful senior executive? Yes, she did. So that means she's got to start doing things differently.
Yeah, sure.
And once she realized that, and her boss was like, "You keep doing this, you're not going to make it. It's not happening."
Wow.
Yeah.
And that helped her. That feedback was what she needed. She's like, "Oh, all right." And eventually she, started working differently and did become successful. But, it is a difficult transition, right? Out of that.
Yeah.
But you don't want to lose the weeds yet if you're good at that. It's just really adding on, right? The key with coaching is you're not getting rid of anything or really changing who you are. You're just adding on new behaviors or options to what you're already doing.
Yeah.
So just think about it that, right? You're not
That's
broken.
a good
We're not
way to,
fixing anything, right? I love that. Somebody, a mentor of mine told me that years ago. So just think about it that way. You're good at the weeds. You just need a little bit of, like, how can you make sure you get the key priorities done every day. So at the end of the day, you're like, okay, the top 2 things got done.
Right.
It would have been great if I got the other things done, but
Right. But then you didn't. Yeah.
That's such a good point. I'm just thinking about, this example you're giving of Betsy, the executive, and it's kind of like you as a perfectionist or as somebody who, just wants to succeed and excel and wants to do everything right, quote unquote, right. You have this control issue where you don't think anyone else can do it as good as you can.
Yes.
Which is how you get in the weeds and you try to do everything. And I'm realizing as my business grows that I can't be doing all of those little things. It's like, are you working in your business or on your business? You know?
Yeah.
And that's another piece of it. It's like, how do you become okay with delegating certain things, or when do you know it's the right time to hire someone else to help you, even if your business can't really afford to do that? Is that something that would like lighten your load and get yourself a little bit sort of bigger picture thinking, right?
I mean, that's the basic rule is if somebody could, do it 75% as well as you, 75, 80, you need to let it go. Like,
Right.
I hire people to do different things for me. Like I have somebody who does social media for me and I still do a lot of the writing, but I just let it go after that, and I really trust them. I mean, I could edit it, I could add a little bit more, but I'm like, you know what? It's good enough.
It's good enough.
Exactly. They say, how does it look? And I basically kind of briefly look at it. I don't know, it looks fine.
It looks fine. Yeah. And just to be okay with that,
and you have to be okay with that, right? You have to really figure out what's the best use of your time. And if you want to really grow a business, your best use of your time is on the things that are probably going to have the biggest added value, right? Making some key decisions to help the business grow or work with key clients or bring in key clients. But some of the other things,
you just have to let them go. You have to let them. I think that's
and what's that standard that's going to be in that
that's the other thing. It's like
that's the hardest part.
It's and there are going to be mistakes. I've had people come back and say, well, there was a mistake or two in your blog, your newsletter, and I'm like, okay,
I know
it's not going to
right.
Make
if you
or
read
break.
any book, there's typos and there's stuff.
I know. I find them all.
I know.
I know people that do too. They read books and they're like, and there's some in my books since after it. I thought I got most of them, but there's still mistakes. I remember a couple and I'm like, but you know what? Like,
it's okay.
It is
you gotta let it go.
Sometimes it's like, what do they say? Like, done is better than perfect. It's done.
Right.
Yes. And that's that other famous phrase, right? But that's part of it is you have to really start being aware of what's good enough and what do you really want to spend your time on.
I know.
Where it's going to be the greatest value.
Right. Letting go of the idea, like as you're saying, good enough is to take that negative connotation away from good enough.
Good enough, and to be like, good enough,
Right. Like say it with a different inflection.
Exactly.
Yeah. How would you say it?
Good enough.
I think
good enough.
Oh, that's good. That's good enough. That's good enough. Because
a little lilt.
Good enough sounds like you're
right.
Giving in to like
it does. It's like it's good enough.
Right.
Mediocrity.
Right.
Like, oh, I don't care that much. It's
exactly.
But
exactly
I think
right.
it's good enough. I think
like
we need
it.
to like.
I like that.
Oh
See,
my
that could
gosh.
be your high five. You could
That
be
could
like,
be our-
is that good enough?
Good enough.
Good enough.
Good enough. We're so excited. It's good enough. Well, this interview has been more than good enough.
More than good enough.
It's been fantastic to talk to you.
I really enjoyed talking to you both.
Oh,
It's been a lot of fun.
Just let our listeners know where they can find you and where they can get the book and all those good things.
Yeah, so my website is www.kcmayer.com. So www.kcmayer.com.
Right.
And the book, this is the lovely book.
Productive
Yes.
Perfectionist.
The Productive Perfectionist. And you can find it on Amazon, Barnes &
Great.
Noble. But yeah, it's both
Awesome.
a paperback as well as Kindle. So yeah.
Kindle, I know. I have it on my Kindle.
Yeah, and I do speaking. I do coaching. Yeah, and I could do a book club if you have a lot of perfectionist women. That want to talk a book
that'd be
club.
great.
Okay.
Oh, well, I might take you up
maybe
on
reach
that.
out to that.
That'd be
But
great.
really, it's really been a pleasure. So thank you so
Such a
much.
pleasure
so
for
much.
us too. Thank you so much, Kathryn Mayer, our guest today. Take care. So you're ready to change your
Turn it over
perfectionist
a
ways?
new leaf. Turn it over a new leaf
Is it
today.
good enough?
I don't know. I like that though, right? Don't you feel like when you
Yes.
say good enough, it's like,
It's very it's very
it's
down.
so negative.
It's like, it's good enough. But it should be like, it's good
Good
enough.
enough. It's good enough.
Yeah.
It's a whole new way to say it.
I know.
I got to embrace that. I don't know how. It's going to take me a while to embrace that.
If you can embrace that, then that would be amazing.
Oh my God. Think about how much more I'd get done if I could just embrace that.
Yes. I mean, think
and
about
again,
how
right
much
back
you
to
would...
like my productivity. How much more can I get done?
I
Because
know.
it's good enough.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm thinking about that. We're done with the interview and like, okay, what's she going to make me do now? I want to take a nap.
Yeah. No, not taking a nap.
Not taking a nap.
Nope.
Things to do.
But she was great.
Yeah.
I
really like her. Yeah.
Yeah, she's got
Nice
a
energy.
really good energy about her.
But it's funny when she said that her husband plays tennis with her. I was like, wow.
I know.
You were like a
Brave.
professional tennis player and he wasn't play tennis with you?
Yeah.
Ugh.
And as she was saying that, all I could think of is like whenever I do anything with Tim, it could be something he's done for the
He's
first
almost
time.
better. He's always better.
Always better.
Always better.
It's
He's
the
always
most
good at it.
annoying thing.
I know. It is annoying.
He's like a perfectionist without knowing that he's a perfectionist.
I
Like
know.
everything he does.
Tim listens, watches, and learns so that when he actually does something, he does it well.
And he just has that.
I just put him in a nut.
You did.
I described
In
him
a nutshell.
perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah. He watches and he listens and he learns.
You're right. He's a very observant observer.
Very.
But also somehow he also has like the physical talent to do the things like.
Well, yes. I mean,
I told you about how when we went we took a surfing lesson for the first time, and I was like, well, I'm going to be so much better at this because I'm like smaller and I'm more like flexible. I'm more
strong
agile.
core.
Gonna do this.
Yeah.
No.
He was better.
Jumped right up on that board.
Wow.
Riding the wave. I was like, oh my
Wow.
God. But that's how he is with everything.
Yeah,
Go to
I
a
know.
spin class. He's never been to a spin class. Hasn't worked
Yeah.
out in 25 years.
I know.
Go to the spin class and he's at the top of the leaderboard.
I know.
I'm like, are you kidding me right now? So anyway, that's neither here nor there. But
No, but I mean, I think that you could learn a lot to
I could learn a
tone
lot. Yeah, tone
things
it down. Tone it down.
Tone it down.
All right. Well, anyway,
Anyway,
the
maybe-
Productive Perfectionist.
Yes.
Kathryn Mayer.
Another
Go-
good one.
Yeah, check her out on Instagram, on her website, and
Yeah.
hope you enjoyed it.
Me too. I'm Lori Schulweiss.
And I'm Jenn Giamo.
And this was Everybody Talks.
Talk to you next time.
Take care.
For more information about our podcast, to learn more about us, or to catch up on all of our episodes, go to our website at every.body.talks.com.
Follow us on Instagram at Shirley, at Jenn Giamo, and at Everybody Talks. And if you want to watch today's episode, go to our YouTube channel at Everybody Talks Podcast.
If you want to be a part of the conversation, join the Everybody Talks community and become an exclusive member of our wellness group. Check out the link in our show notes to learn more.
Don't forget, if you like what you've heard, give us a 5-star rating, write a review, and tell a friend. We're for everybody and everybody. The Everybody Talks podcast is co-created, executive produced, and hosted by us, Lori Schulweiss and Jenn Giamo. Produced and edited by Station 16.
Our theme song music is written and performed by Jackie Ryle and Aaron Navisi, with additional support from our pups, Oliver, Milo, Murray, and Frankie.
Talk to you next time.